Welcome back to the Daughters of the Moon podcast. We're grateful that you can join us for another week.
We certainly are.
And we are very fortunate today. We have Dr. Dravon James. She is the founder of the Next Step Leadership Academy, a company that empowers women to use everything that shows up in their lives, good, bad, or otherwise, to reach their next level of greatness. Dr. Dravon is a transformation specialist using her everyday peace philosophy to coach women on how to master goal attainment. She's the author of Freedom is Your Birthright. As a leader in the healthcare industry for more than 3 decades, she is the recipient of the Secretary McDowan Coin of Recognition for her leadership efforts to combat the COVID pandemic, radio host of the Dr. Dravon James Everyday Peace Live weekly show on Unity Online Radio, and coach on the Sirius XM Road Dog Trucking Show, and as an actress whose career credits include a recurring role on HBO's acclaimed The Wire. Dr. Dravon uses this training and experience to lead women on their victory using the power of everyday peace to achieve their next level of greatness in life and business. So, welcome. We're really excited for you to be on the podcast with us today.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to be here with you both today.
So, can you tell us a little bit about kind of how you got on this path and what has led you to write these books and those kind of things?
Oh, yeah. Wow. So I'll start a little bit about the beginning and we'll do a quick summary. But yeah, I was 17 years old and I just graduated from high school. It was the summer before I was leaving to go to college. And my brother gave me a little book, The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. I always thought he bought that book for me, by the way, but I found out years later that it was my mom's book. He took it off her bookshelf and re-gifted it to me. But anyway, so he gave me that book, and uh, I now know it was a bit of there's no chaos or randomness in the universe because my reading style at that young age of 17 was Harlequin romance novels. So it was not a Harlequin romance novel. So it wouldn't even be something that I would necessarily read, right? It wasn't his, I liked historical romance. I still do. And it wasn't historical romance. But for some reason, I read it not only one time, but it had to be over 20 times before I left for college in August. And I just felt like that book had opened up something in me. At the time, I didn't have the language for motivational speaker, transformational coach, none of that. I just knew that whatever um, fear or uncertainty or doubt or low self esteem, whatever it was that I was harboring inside of myself, I felt like the walls of that were being melted away and a new foundation was being laid. And I felt like I called it healing. And I was going to school to study pharmacy. And I did. I got my doctorate degree in pharmacy. But at 17, I knew that I wanted to help people achieve that feeling that I got from that book, The Power of Positive Thinking. It led me to continue my study of what I now call peace. I didn't even have a word for it then. I just was hungry for anything that led me to this point of knowing that everything was all right. Everything was absolutely all right. And my external circumstances, to some degree, were determined by the internal story I was telling myself. And although I couldn't change facts, you get a flat tire on the way to going to work, well, you get a flat tire on the way to going to work. That's the fact. But the story that I told myself about the flat tire was entirely up to me and would determine um, the energy, if you will, that I projected out in the world and would bring to me more of the same. So I got all that at 17 years old. I didn't have all the language for it, but I knew something had happened for me that I wanted to help happen for other people. And so, long story short, jumping straight to the end, there's many, many years in between that I just kept studying and I had a little, my sister, so she said to me one day, I'm just going to get you a handheld recorder because you're always taking notes. You're always, listening to books on tape. Back then you had a tape player in your car. And I was always listening to books on tape and I was always recording things that I wanted to share with a potential audience one day. And after many, many years of practicing pharmacy, and doing just little talks here and there. Maybe somebody would invite me to talk at a community organization really about pharmacy. And I'd come in and I talk a little bit about, you know, healthy state of mind or whatever I was calling it at the time. But some years ago, I was working as a consultant in the pharmacy field for long-term care facilities. And once a month, I did a lecture for nurses and physicians and other providers. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I had been doing that for years. Why it never occurred to me before now, but everything shows up in due season. It occurred to me to save 5 minutes at the end of those lectures to talk about what I called everyday peace. And it really was just about healing yourself and taking care of yourself. And I geared it to the healthcare professional because that's who my audience was. And they loved it. They absolutely loved it so much till they invited me to be a keynote speaker at one of their events. And they said, when you come, we don't want you to talk anything about pharmacy and nothing about any regulations and drug therapies. We want you to talk strictly about that everyday peace thing that you do. And that was really the beginning of me seeing that it was resonating with people. It was helping people, and I wanted to do more of it.
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah. And I think that we're all striving for that, right? To live in everyday peace every day of our lives and to, be able to sift through the chaos that we call life to find that peace in the day.
Be the best we can be all the time, right? That's what we want.
Right. So that leads me to say, too, I usually tell people my definition of peace, because most people, when I say peace, they think of sitting in a lotus position somewhere with your arms crossed, and that is lovely. I wish I could do that all day long, but we just can't, right? We're living in the real world and things are happening. So when I say peace, I mean wholeness, completeness, nothing missing, nothing broken, totality, right? That means that whatever comes into your life, right, the things that you want to come into your life that you've been hoping and praying for, when they show up, you should have peace, and you can have peace. And when those things show up that you did not want those things to show up, they're so unwanted and they're making you unhappy. In that moment, peace is still available to you. And it is the training of ourselves. It's a lifetime. I wish I could say I had perfected it. I have not, but it is a journey. And that's what I really want people to, get on that space of understanding that peace is available. Everything that shows up in your life makes part of the whole puzzle of your journey.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And we were actually just having a conversation a little bit earlier today about that. And it's like, yes, there's a lot of negative things that happen in the world, but how you handle it, how you muddle through it is a choice. And you always have that choice to have that peace or to have that happiness in it to find the way through. So it's like, yes, this is a situation, but how will we get through this one? So
Yeah.
Yeah, right. How after we have our temper tantrum, which we are allowed to have, we want to bottle those emotions up. But after we get through that part of it, and we want to move quickly through that part as we can, as quickly as we can, in a healthy manner, move through the parts of letting ourselves have our moment, if you will, to the point of acceptance and to the point of this is actually for my good. Although I don't know, I don't have the wisdom to know how yet. I don't have that in me yet. But that belief I do have that this somehow is working out for my good.
yeah, I would agree with that.
Me too. Absolutely. Me too. We were just having the same conversation with our granddaughter, great granddaughter, a little bit ago. She was trying to tell us how she's so unhappy. And, we're just trying to say to her, you have to change that. We can't change that for you. We can make suggestions to change it. But if you don't listen to what we're suggesting to you, we can't help you get it any, make it any better. She has to look at her own self, realize her own downswing to make her have the upswing so she can be the better person that she wants to be. But that's pretty hard to convince a 18-year-old of that.
Oh my goodness, it is, right? And we've all been there, right? We've all been there. And I know that it is not, I have young adults. My children are young adults. And I know it's not comforting for them to hear us say, oh, yeah, I've been there. I know what that feels like. But we absolutely do, right? And so, if we're evolving, which hopefully we are, we can say that, that old phrase, I used to hate to hear my mother say, this too shall pass. She would say that all the time. And I was like, when will it pass? Right? She's so angry about that, right? But it's so true that this too shall pass. And, to let yourself feel your emotions, but don't go down the rabbit hole with them. Just kind of watch it and start questioning it and say, yeah, why do you feel that way? Really? And why do you feel that way? And just become very, very curious as though you're watching a show. I tell my daughter that all the time. I said, don't get too involved in it. Just act like you're watching a show and become very, very curious about why is that? Why do I feel that? And why do I feel that? And why do I think that? And become very curious and wrapped up in the curiosity, and it will consume you more than the actual uh, depression of the whole thing, like, oh, this is happening to me. Before you know it, you're kind of finding it, a little bit humorous, maybe a little bit, this is ridiculous. I can't believe that these people are, this insensitive or whatever. You have your little chuckle and your little cry, and you'll be more relaxed. And then the answers start coming when you relax.
They
Yeah.
do. That's true. They do.
Yeah, they really do. They really do. And I love that way you say that, because it is then, like, I can see even when you were saying it, like because even for myself, I mean, like you said, we're always evolving. So, you're in a bad situation, you ask yourself that question. It is like, oh, that is kind of funny. Why am I being like this? Why did I over dramatize that, or, take that so personally? And you can step outside of that little bit of that chaos then, right? So.
And you can, find a little humor in it. My mother used to ask me all the time, why do you find everything, you laugh about everything? And I used to say to her, well, if I didn't laugh, I'd be crying perpetually. Right. Right. But, you look at your situation, and even at yourself, I find that we're so hard on ourselves. We're expecting, myself included, I'll have some behavior, or I'll say some words, or, in a conversation. I was like, well, why don't you say it? You could tell when someone, gives you that kind of look, like, oh, he's like, well, why say it like that? And then you spend, for me anyway, I could spend the whole evening ruminating on that fact, instead of just going ahead and comforting that little girl inside of myself and saying, you're okay. Girl, no one expects you to be perfect. What
Yeah.
do you need right
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, that's right. And what is perfection? Anyways,
Right.
eh?
Just
What?
another it's just another way for us to find fault with ourselves and each other, right? Instead of looking for acceptance, and we're looking for progress. I always tell my clients, replace that perfection word with progress. Did you see progress? And people will be too hard on themselves even with that. I was like, no, I didn't see progress. I'm like, sure you did. Because I bet you a year ago you would have not thought to question your behavior, or even question your criticism of your behavior. You would have thought, I deserve to be criticized, or whatever, this person deserves for me to lash out to them. Now you're questioning it, and that's great. That's progress. That is
Mhm.
progress. And if you can rebound more quickly, become more resilient, that's more progress. If you're looking for this to completely go away, well, keep working, keep making progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think a lot of times when we do reflect, like you said, we reflect so in such a short period of time, we can't see that progress. And like you said, when we look back a year ago or even 6 months ago and say, hey, I handled that different than I would have handled it. And
Day.
sometimes it could be a day, but it seems the longer that you kind of go back, you can see that and reflect on that. So I really like how you said that, because I think it's so true. We are our own worst critics.
We are.
Definitely.
We definitely are.
Oh, we are. And that's what I encourage my clients. Um, I, I now work primarily with women, but I used to work with both men and women. And the women clients were a little bit better at this than the men clients, but I encourage people to keep a journal. Because if I were to go back and pull out a journal from when I was 19 years old, and I do have it, and I'll read a page, and I sort of chuckle at the intensity of those emotions when you're 19 and you're writing those emotions. But uh, if I just step back and just look at the situation, and I realize that, wow, well, I'm having a similar situation, right? the situations sort of just keep repeating themselves. And when
Yep.
you can sort of see patterns in that, then you can move better towards progress, right? And if you're not great with journaling, I would say, get a life coach, because life coach are the best keepers of accurate history as you give it to them. So they're able to go back and say, well, wait a second, last week this happened and you did this. Very similar situation. Now this week this happened and you're doing this. That's progress. You need someone to really help you with that if you're not keeping a journal and able to. Some people say when they get really upset, and I used to be one of these people, so I can relate. When they get really, really revved up, they cannot put their emotions down on paper, but you could probably rattle them off into a recorder or to someone that would
Yeah,
be willing to listen. So just having some good history is going to be important for you to track your progress.
Yeah, I would
very
agree
true.
with that. I'm a journaler. My mother, not so much,
Not so
but
much.
and I have always journaled. And so it's interesting because yes, I also you can reflect on the things where you have changed. And it is nice, like you said, to either do something like that or have a coach or somebody that, if you can't have a
Mhm.
life coach, somebody that you really trust that can hold you somewhat accountable to be able to say, okay, let's take a look at this and how far you've come and what's different about this now,
Yeah, yeah,
and that check-in point.
Right, yeah. That is so very important. Having that team, creating a safe space team is so important. I always tell people, try to get someone on your team who's not going to be impacted by your results, right? Because otherwise, you don't know whether or not they're saying this for their own. You get in that mind space sometimes, like, well, is that really for my benefit or for your benefit? So you want to get people on your team who are sort of impartial, but who are very, very much dedicated to your success. So they're not necessarily going to be yes people. You'll say something up, wait a second, let's
hmm
look at that this way. So you really want to get a good, strong, solid team. That's important when you're talking about moving towards a place where you are embracing peace every day.
yeah. That's important to do that. I try in my lifetime. I've tried to be very up on the most days, and because I believe that if I showed that to my children as they were growing up to enjoy their day as they're walking out the door, then it's going to give them some kind of highlight in the day, and you try to do that. They don't see that so much as you're doing it because there's teenagers too, right? But I like to think of it as a flower. If we see a flower and the flower's got a flaw in it, the first thing we do is go, ah, how can we make that better? Okay, how can we make that flower so it's beautiful again? Because the first thing we do is a flower, if we see it's healthy, we go, oh my God, it's so beautiful. We're not looking for the flaws, are we? Right? We're looking
Right.
for beauty in it, and we want that beauty to stand out because it makes us happy, makes us feel good in our heart and everything else, right? So as people, we should sort of be reflecting like a flower. If we see it, make it be the best we can see as we look at it. And if there's any flaws in it, then we work on that to make it better. Right?
Oh, I love that. I love that analogy. Yeah, look at it. Look at our lives like a flower. Wow, that's beautiful. Not that down.
But
So
we
yeah, that is so that you're so right. We always see the beauty in the flower. I just threw out some flowers. In fact, on my desk right now are some flowers that my son gave me for Mother's Day, and so they could go, but they still have some beauty in them, right?
Yeah.
we keep
And
to the last minute.
right to last minute. So like you said, I could see, I see a couple of brown spots, and I could change the water probably after we talk, but it's still a flower and it still has special meaning to me, right?
Mhm.
And I have the same thing in the other room. My daughter gave me flowers, and I said, "Oh, get rid of them yet." I know it's past Mother's Day, but there's still flowers, and there's still some beauty in there. And if we could do that with ourselves, right? If we could still see the beauty in ourselves, and how about with others? And a quick note and a tip for people is that the more flaws we are, if you're a person who really sees flaws and blemishes in other people's characters, it usually is an indication that we are very, very, very hard on ourselves. right? And
Yes.
these are things that we're seeing in ourselves, and we don't want to necessarily, treat ourselves poorly. So, the brain and the ego has some intellect to it, and so it pushes it outward. Says, "Oh, it's you, it's you, it's you," but really, it's just reflecting what we see in ourselves. And so, those things that we see in other people that really, really bother us, we need to kind of don't be hard on ourselves, but just say, "Oh, well, let me take a look and see how I could clear that up in my own life, in my own space."
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, if we could look at our flaws that we have, because we all have them, and
Mhm.
embrace those flaws. And how can those flaws help us? Maybe, you know, can they push us in a direction, or can they hold, how are they holding us back, and how do we move with them and encompass them into our life to better ourselves instead of allowing them to hold us back?
Mhm.
Oh, that's a very good point, right? And so we'll talk about that, the duality of a gift, right? So that is, if you are a person who is very sensitive, and that's great. That means that you're probably going to have high empathy for people, right? And so that's on the positive part of that. Now we get into the shadowy part of that, and that means that probably you'll take everything personally and think, and you won't be able to
Sure.
take constructive criticism. Well, so you don't want to become a person who is void of sensitivity. No, that's a good trait to have. You just want to tweak that part that's maybe a little bit too much over in that area. Look at it from that perspective, but we're not really willing to get rid of that entire attribute of yourself. People say, "Oh, your sensitivity is a flaw." I may be using it incorrectly. It's a tool.
Mhm.
And if you use a screwdriver for which you need a hammer, doesn't mean the screwdriver is bad. It just means you're using the tool in the wrong way, right? So if you use your sensitivity to always be offended, right? It doesn't mean sensitivity is bad. It just means you're using the tool of sensitivity in the wrong way.
Yeah.
So it's just about tweaking. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so do you think there's ways that we can learn this about ourselves and tweak these things? Is there little tips that we can do to sort of reflect on that for ourselves and help ourselves figure them out?
Self-awareness is like gold currency. I will say that. The more self-aware we become, the happier we become with life, the more at peace we become at life, the more we can embrace um, just the whole total package of life. How do we get to a place of self-awareness? Well, that's a whole bit of work, but I would tell people that it is probably the best work that you will ever do that will not only benefit you, but everyone who comes in contact with you in the world at large will benefit from us being more self-aware. How do we get to a place of self-awareness? Well, the quickest way to do that is spend time with yourself, right? And when people are newly meeting each other and they're falling in love, and one of the things they do is they spend a lot of time together, whether it's face to face or on the phone. They're always going to be in each other's company. Why? Because they're learning about the other person. Well, to become more self-aware, what we have to do is to be willing to spend time with ourselves. That's void of any other social media, distractions from reading, from doing, just with ourselves. Maybe we'll do a walk in nature. It doesn't have to be long, boring, maybe you'll do a drive somewhere. But I love a walk in nature or sitting in the park when you can um, attune all your senses into this self-awareness time and just be aware of yourself without any judgment.
Yeah.
Right? Be aware of what you're thinking about. And this is the tricky part for people when I work with clients about self-awareness. So you'll have a thought, right? I'm big on journaling. You'll hear me say this a lot, and if we have time, I'll tell you why. But there's a number of reasons, but I do have one particular reason. But I'm big on being able to write something down. And if a thought comes into your mind, you just jot it down and you go on about your day. Say thank you for the thought, and I'm not going to think about that now. I'm going to continue doing whatever I'm doing, whether I'm sitting in the park or walking through the park. And as the thoughts come in, you just jot them down if you have something to write with, and you dismiss them. And Eckhart Tolle says that thoughts are like clouds, right? They're just moving along, meandering along in the sky. And if you don't disturb them, they'll move on, right? It's when you try to engage them. Say, oh, I was offended when that happened. You start retelling the story. Say, no, it's just a thought. It's just a cloud. It's just passing through. Let it go through. And as if you are able to write down those thoughts, it'll tell you where your tendencies are. You become more self-aware. It's like, oh, why do I have a tendency to think about this one particular person in this particular way? What's that all about? Just become curious or become judgmental. Just start asking your questions. So questions, why does this fear keep popping up for me? Right? Whatever it is, you're on a journey, a loving journey of becoming more aware of who you are. And without any judgment or condemnation, just knowing who you are. And then through that self discovery, you'll decide what you want to work on. So, well, how does it make me feel? Oh, I don't like that feeling. Hmm. What could I do about that? And you take small baby steps to replace that activity, whatever it is, with something else. So that's the most loving way that I teach my clients to become more self-aware. It's just spending time with yourself, gentle time, it could be time in the shower. Just no radio, no nothing, just you and that water, and you just watching your thoughts. Of course, you can't take notes in the shower, but
Yeah.
you try to remember a couple of those and jot them down afterwards. But just time with yourself will help with that self-awareness piece.
So do you think when we're the more self-aware we become and we reflect on our thoughts that we have, we can find the things that trigger us to maybe be in that position and to have those thoughts?
We should, right? We are pretty much aware of we should be aware of triggers. Let me just say that's so very important. I do not want to discount that. If you're a person who finds yourself at the end of the day exhausted emotionally and you're just spun up and you're just in this angry state, you want to know what's triggering that. Is it the 12 o'clock noon meeting that you have every day, or is it the late lunch? What's triggering this? Is it conversations with your spouse about a particular issue, your adult children? What is triggering this? So you want to be aware of what's triggering these feelings of insecurity, of fear. Usually people say the first thing they'll tell me is that I'm angry, and that's an anger is like a catch-all emotion, right? Really, anger is a socially acceptable way of saying I am fearful about something. But because we don't want to appear to be vulnerable and weak, we don't want to say that we're fearful. It sounds more I think it sounds more like a warrior when we say we're angry, right? So people like to say they're angry. They may not like it, but they like it more than saying that I'm afraid. I
Yeah.
have fear. But really when I hear anger, the emotion behind it really is fear. There's something that you're afraid of. And so we want to find out what is triggering that. When you notice this anger comes up, and recently I just use an example. I had a client says, I find that, at the end of my workday, I'm so angry. I said, well, what's happening that's consistent in your workday? Well, consistently she has this meeting that she has to attend, and she comes out of that meeting and she's very, very angry. And when it comes down to it, she's fearful. She's fearful that, about job security. She's fearful that she's not valued there, and all these fears come up. And okay, let's start dealing with the fears, because the fear is triggering this emotion, right? This worry, this insecurity, right? So that those becoming more self-aware will definitely help you identify, you're right, absolutely, help you identify your triggers. What's making you feel insecure or angry?
Yeah, because I think when you're feeling that way, and I mean we can't always, because sometimes you don't have a choice, you have to go to that 12 o'clock meeting, right? There isn't a choice about that. But I think if you can
Right.
find these triggers behind it, then it can help you find ways to kind of meander through it so it's less, you have that less feeling of fear or that less anxiety going
Mhm.
into that meeting, because now you're finding little ways to get yourself through it.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. So once we identify things, we're gonna work on perspective, because remember, we are telling the story to ourselves always, right? The facts are the facts. The meeting occurs. This person says whatever they say, right? The facts are the facts. But what happens, I'm sorry about that. But what happens in between there is we tell ourselves that story. Never happens before. My phone is never on, so I don't know how this is happening.
Things happen.
Really,
It's okay. I
yeah.
always do for a reason. There's usually some reason behind it. I've been thinking through this thing too. If we were to put a toolbox together, okay, on how to make people see what they can do for themselves, what would you envision in a toolbox?
Oh, you have used one of my favorite analogies. In a toolbox, what you can do for yourself. Oh, the first thing I put in that toolbox is self-talk. Self,
But
how you how you address yourself. What is the story that you're telling you about you? So that's the first thing is your self-talk. We're going to
right,
get some affirming self-talk. Contrary to popular opinion, we cannot criticize ourselves to sustainable, improved behavior. It does not work that way.
right,
Does not. We are living proof that it doesn't work that way, but we're just not looking at the facts. So I put in there affirmative self-talk would be my first thing. The
right.
second thing I put in that toolbox would be a gratitude practice. So we're going to talk good to ourselves about everything,
Yeah,
right? And then we're going to have gratitude in there. And we're going to find something to be grateful for every day. And you, every day, every day, we're going to find something to be grateful for. That's going to be in our toolbox. We're going to pull out this gratitude from there every day. And then we're going to pull out some rest. Rest.
yeah.
There
Rest is
is this common thought that we should power through everything.
yeah,
Just power through. When you get to the other side, you'll rest. And that used to be my mode of operation too for many, many years. And so what I've discovered and what I teach my clients is if you will build rest into your day, and rest comes in many forms. It could come in the form of maybe you could put your head down for 5 minutes if you have the ability to do that. Maybe you could walk outside for 5 minutes and just get some sunlight on your face and feel some air, right? Or maybe you could do some breathing exercises, right? Just deep breath in, extending the belly all the way, exhaling really deep, letting it all out, pushing the belly button to the spine. So a couple of those,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Maybe you could do something like that just to get ourselves some rest. And, from some clients who find deep breathing, they tell me that it makes them very, very nervous when they first start. I said, well, let's get some rest by touching the pads of our finger to our thumb. Just do that. And just give ourselves like, 5 or 6 rounds of that just to get some rest. Just really concentrate on moving those fingers back and forth for 5 or 6 rounds. Give yourself some rest. That helps refresh you. It's like hitting the refresh button on your computer, right? It gets you rebooted. You now can hear things differently. You'll see things differently, right? It validates, revalidates you, re-energizes you. So those are probably the top three things that I would put into my toolbox. And they're all things that I can control myself, that I don't need external assistance with. And that's important when we're talking about a toolbox. We
right.
want to have things in there that we can control, that we can pull this tool out when we need it. We don't have to ask for permission from somebody else.
Sure.
Yeah.
Nice. I like that toolbox.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a good toolbox. And I think it's nice when you have something like that that you can pull out. And I think a lot of people too, I was just thinking that when you were talking about rest, because then I was really glad to see how you explained it, because I think a lot of people think distraction is rest,
Yes,
right?
it's not.
We're surfing our social media, we're throwing on the TV, we're, whatever it is to distract ourselves isn't really rest, it's just a distraction. So I really liked how you laid that out.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
That is so good. And so I have a lot, when I used to work a lot with male clients, they would say, oh, I rest with sports, and that's fine. You rest with the television on, and women do too. I said, but what I would encourage you to do is decompress and rest before. Give yourself 5 minutes before you go into all that stimulation, the announcer, the flashing lights, before you do all of that, re-stimulating the brain, right? And when you do this rest of the brain, I tell you, I love when people contact me and they tell me, I feel like I've been on a vacation. Yep, you do. You do. If you would, your brain is hungry for it. If you would just, it's begging you for it. If you just sit 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, and then come back, and then you can do all the internet and television stuff that you want to do that you were perceiving as rest before. Actually do the rest first and then go engage in those activities because that is not rest. It is distraction, just as you said. It is distraction, it's not rest.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was funny the other day, my granddaughter was getting ready for her grad, and so she was stressed and oh, I feel like I'm going to be nauseous. Oh my goodness. I said to her, okay, I just want you to take a deep breath. Breathe in, big deep breath. Now breathe out. Okay, now do it again. So I made her do it like 3, 4 times, and then she's like, yeah, I feel a little bit better. I said, okay, anytime today when you're feeling that stress coming on and you're just feeling anxious, just take a second and breathe. Close your eyes would be really good, but if you can't because you're with a whole bunch of people, just take a couple of deep breaths and it will help you
Yeah.
through your day.
Yeah.
And there's science behind this too, because breathing deeply engages the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the opposite of the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is the stress that says, is there a tiger chasing me? I think so, right? And so we get all riled up in the cortisol levels and all that. But when we take those deep breaths, it engages the parasympathetic nervous system, which says, honey, you're safe. You're fine. Everyone loves you. You're like, ah.
And then grandma's was just smile, enjoy your day, right? Just smile. And like you've always said that, even when we were growing up, right? Like, I'd be like, oh, why did my friends, they can all find boys that like them and are attracted to them. And I'm sitting over here. She goes, are you smiling? Because that's what you're putting out into the world, right? So if you're not smiling and putting that out there, why would they come up to you if you have this staunch look? So I thought that between the two of us, she had this little toolbox of her own to take for the day, right?
Yeah. And she needed
Oh,
it.
I love that. Yes, and we cannot discount the power of a smile. A smile is a universal language. If you don't know anyone anywhere and you smile, it says something that everybody can translate, right? So you're absolutely right. That smile. Oh my goodness. I just tell my kids, don't leave home without your smile. Get your smile up.
And it's true because
Right? And
when
you
you
know,
when
they'd
you
be looking at me
smile,
like grimacing. And I'd say to them, well, that's close.
yeah. When you smile, though, it brings joy to your heart because to smile, you have to think about what you're doing, right? So it does bring some peace and joy to your heart when you do smile because you think, you just want to see that other person happy that you're smiling at. Especially if I walk up to somebody and I see them have a really bad look on their face, I smile at them because I think, I wouldn't want to be you.
Right. And you just pay attention. We talked about self-awareness a little while ago. Pay attention to what happens in your chest area when you smile, right? Pay attention how this area opens up, right?
Yeah.
And it is in this love chakra area, just opens up when you smile. And we need that. It's energizing us. It's pushing that energy out into the world, but it's also refueling us. These smiles, when you have small kids and they just will smile for anything, they frown up at you, and I would say, okay, let's smile. I don't feel like I said, I know you don't feel like it, but let's just smile because it's gonna help you. It's gonna help you. you're going to start to feel better. And they want to smile because they think it's going to help their mother.
That's true.
Right. But they get older and they realize that, oh, yeah, this smiling does work. It does work. Yeah.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, it really does. I just, I think it's that last thing we need to put on before we leave the house, right?
It
Yep.
is.
Don't leave home without it. You leave a lot of things at home. You can leave home with nothing else but your smile, and somebody will help you.
Exactly. And you never know who your smile is going to help, who that graciousness that you're giving to them by that smile is going to take that back in and being like, "Oh, I needed that today. Thank you. Now I can get through my day," or what have you,
Yeah.
right?
I also,
Yeah,
I
yeah, you're
also,
right. You're right. Someone smiles at you, it's like, oh, somebody appreciates me, somebody cares about me, someone values me. That a smile says all of that. And you may not even know that person, but you just complimented them in the best of ways.
you
Yeah.
did. That's
Yeah,
true. That's true.
absolutely.
I also believe that before you leave the house, if you look in the mirror at yourself and there's something that you don't like in the mirror, change that one thing. Change the one thing, because even if it's just putting a lipstick on or mascara on because it makes you feel good when you look at yourself, do it. If it takes that 2 more minutes to do it, because that is also going to put a smile on your face because it raises your level of confidence in yourself, right? And makes you smile even more so because you say, now I'm ready to face the world. Now I'm
Oh,
ready,
that's so true. And
you're
it shows that you value yourself, right? Because
exactly.
if you say to yourself, well, I really would like to change this lipstick because it doesn't, but I don't have time. What your inner self hears is that I'm not worth it. So
Yes.
I'll suffer through all day long. And then the energy you put forth is that I'm not worth it. I'm not worth it. But when you say, what, I value myself, I'm going to do this really quickly. I'm not going to dilly-dally. I'm going to get right in there, fix this really quickly. And now I'm ready. I feel my best. I'm going to give the world my best. Absolutely. Absolutely. Take care of yourself.
Right.
And when you do that, and when I talk to younger clients, um, they'll say to me, well, I feel like that's selfish. I feel like that's selfish. And I say, well, the best thing you can give the world is the best version of you. So, and to use your example, if you're going to be preoccupied all day long because you wore the shade of lipstick that just makes you look hideous,
Yeah. Yeah.
then you're preoccupied and you're not giving the world your best because you're reserving a little bit of that to continue criticizing yourself for purchasing that lipstick and for putting it on and then for not taking it off.
Yep.
So you're in this perpetual state of I'm not good at lipstick, I'm not worthy of change, I don't care about myself, and then you want to come out and give love, but it doesn't work that way. You're giving that same energy that you're giving to yourself, you're giving it to other people, even if your gestures are kind.
Mhm.
Yep.
It's wrapped in that energy. People say, well, I don't understand. I'm doing all the right things. It was the energy how are you treating yourself to do those right things?
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it starts with ourselves, right?
Yeah.
We have to love ourselves to be able to love other people. And,
Mm.
I think like you say, is you do that. And then all day in the back of your head, you have that story going, that little dialogue going about your lipstick. And you're like, the end of the day, you're angry and you're frustrated. And it was like, that was a 3 seconds fix that could have wound my day totally different,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
Oh my
maybe
gosh.
somewhere you
Yeah.
stop your story and say, okay, you know what? I didn't do that. So next time I will. Let's move on from our day. Let's leave that in the past and change our direction now.
Right. Right.
Oh, that is so pivotal. We cannot leave without talking about that forgiveness in that moment. Let's just say you didn't change that lipstick. You had a bus to catch, you wanted to run and get that bus, and now you're there, and that part of you is saying, so worried about this lipstick. I can't believe it. So you know what? I really forgive myself. And actually I love you because you're such a giving person. You really wanted to be on time. You sacrificed this. Here's how we're going to do this differently tomorrow. Is that
Mhm.
going to be a deal? Are we okay with that? Yes, we are. Okay, let's move on. I love you. That's how we do gentle correction for ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's,
Yeah.
first of all, the self-awareness that I'm still beating myself up about the lipstick, right? Well, I don't have to wait for somebody to come in to correct that. I can do that right away. And that affirms me. It tells me that I don't have to be 100% perfect. I don't. I can make correction and do change at any time, and I just did, and I will forgive myself, and I always will. And I love me. Oh my goodness. Who
Bingo.
doesn't want to receive that from somebody else?
That's good.
Absolutely. No, I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
It
a good thing to tell people, right?
is.
Because we have so much power within ourselves for ourselves that we don't, I think, even grasp on a day-to-day basis, right? I think sometimes we do better at grasping it than other days, depending on what our life is doing in that particular moment. But we are so powerful as humans.
We are. We are. We're our own leader.
We are amazingly powerful. And I think sometimes we scare ourselves how powerful we are. So we reject it, right? Because with great power comes what? Great responsibility. Because why should someone else be doing these things for you when you can definitely do them for yourself, right? And I tell people all the time, the love that you seek externally is the love that you have internally to give to yourself. When you give it to you,
Mhm.
then you'll start receiving it externally. As long as you don't use your power, you won't attract 100% of what you're looking for. We have to stand in this power and not in the power to change other people, right?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
change ourselves into who we want to be. We're so focused outwardly on the external world. You hear it all the time. Oh, we're criticizing our favorite sports team because they didn't do this. We criticize the government. We criticize our boss. We criticize our spouse. We criticize our children. The external criticism goes on, which is really a reflection of us saying to ourselves, I don't think you're good enough. I don't think you can cut the mustard. And we have to just change that dialogue and say, sweetie, I see you doing the best that you can. I'm so proud of
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Right? Changing that dialogue and making us the powerful person will change everything around us.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
bet. You bet.
I agree. So if you had a final thought to leave with everybody, or piece of advice or something, what would it be?
Oh, it would be this. We talked about how we focus on triggers. We know our self-awareness tells us when something is throwing us into a state of fear. What I would leave people with is this. I want you to become super, super aware of when something makes you smile. That's a trigger, right? Not a trigger, right? But that's what we call a glimmer, right? A glimmer. So that's a glimmer. This thing made me smile. In fact, I encourage my clients to keep a smile journal, to write things down that make them smile, and then seek out your day to put yourself in places where you can have more of those experiences that cause you to attach to glimmers. Because glimmers activate within you your place of power, your place of safety, your place of love and of peace. And so it's not like, oh, la la land, you're not be able to accomplish anything. This is your most creative energy.
Yes.
You can go out and really get some quantum leap stuff done when you're attached to your glimmers. What makes you feel happy and safe? So pay attention to your glimmers. When you see yourself smile, take note of that.
Do you have one of your books with you right there?
Do not have one of my books with me. I should keep one near me. But my book is Freedom is Your Birthright. And I'll tell you really quickly, it's available on Amazon. It's under 100 pages on purpose because the jewels and the gems in that book, I want you to keep it on your nightstand, which is where mine is. I keep it on your nightstand. So before you go to bed, open up to a particular page, read that quick page, and get something that you can use to help you get to become the happiest person that you know.
Nice.
Perfect.
Beautiful.
And where can everybody find you?
Oh, you can find me on social media under my name, Dr. Dravon James, my website under the same name, Dr. Dravon James. And if you attach to my website, please drop me a note. You can find out more about our Leaders in High Heels, which is a 12-week group coaching session, which helps you to become the happiest person you know in 3 areas: your health, your wealth, and your relationships.
Nice. Beautiful.
Wonderful. Well, that's beautiful. Well, it's been such a pleasure. This hour has like flown by. I feel like we could have talked more and more
I
and
think
got
so.
more in depth. So we'd love to have you back sometime if you'd like to come back and
Oh,
go deeper
definitely.
down with us because we really
Yeah,
appreciate
it was
it.
interesting because we could inspire each other as we're going here and pack our own toolbox and things like that too. So thank you
Yes,
for that.
yes.
Thank you
Yes.
for that.
So thank you so much for sharing space. I will put all of the information in the show notes. And yeah, we just really appreciate you being here with us today.
You betcha. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you, and all the best to you both.
Oh, thank you. And everybody else, tune in next time.
You bet.